Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of Countless Chronicles. I'm your host, Tessa, at Silky Dreams on Twitter. I also play Callie in Countless Heroes, and joining me, as always, is my incredibly wonderful and lovely co-host, Heather.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather. I play Soxy on Countless Heroes. I'm also available on Twitter at amethyst_magic. And we're here to recap episodes 99 through 112 for you tonight.
It's going to be a good one because we're starting off right at the beginning of Arc 4, Wealth, and heading straight into the Week of Nightmares. So, Heather, why don't you go ahead and take it away and get us started with episode 99.
All right, sounds good. So, episode 99, Aruna the 7th, 1200, because we're in a new year in game. And let's see. So, we had Soxy, Pip, Seldana, Owen, Syl, and Callie. Everyone had a horrible nightmare early in the morning around 3 or 4 o'clock. And no one really knew why, but they all involved the number 8 in some way, shape, or form. Also, everyone heard a scream just before waking up. And at least for Syl, it was definitely Dub's voice. Everyone else was not necessarily 100% sure, but Syl recognized her boyfriend's voice for sure. Soxy ended up going over to Pinballs to try to find out more information and check on everybody. Callie and Owen and Seldana and all tried to kind of get themselves calmed down and ready for the day. Pip ended up destroying his most recent recipe because that had been what he did right before when he went to bed. So he thought maybe it had something to do with the nightmare. And Syl went looking for Dub. He hadn't stayed over at her place that night, so she used an animal messenger to try to send a message to him. All of the party went outside and started walking around and noticed that there were a lot more people outside at this hour of the day than usual. Significantly larger number than usual. In fact, roughly an eighth of the population of the city. Another 8 coming into play. At Pinball's Tower, Soxy, Owen, and Pip all ran into each other. They'd all ended up going in that general direction and talked about their nightmares. They ended up going inside, and Soxy was separated from them for a while. Some strange things happened, almost like a waking nightmare. And eventually the 3 of them ended up back together after dealing with a sort of ghost situation. They ended up heading over to the Beer Forge to see if they could meet up with everybody else, and they left a note in case anyone else came to Pinball's Tower for any reason. Seldana started making her way through town, just sort of wandering aimlessly, and along the way kept hearing people muttering things to her. Your Majesty, the Queen, Your Highness, My Lady. All of the voices just dripped with disdain, though, like they were using those words almost as slurs against her. And as she kept running, she eventually found herself in the Temple District and at Callie's Temple. Callie's temple had a few people in it trying to calm themselves down and collect themselves. Seldana went in, and neither she nor Callie saw anyone. Callie had been talking to people, and all of a sudden everyone disappeared. And for Seldana, it was like the temple was just empty. To Callie, it started looking like everything had been destroyed and was falling apart again, like it was old and decrepit and forgotten all over again. And voices in her head told her that it represented her god. Seldana, meanwhile, felt like the temple had been abandoned, and as they were both sort of breaking, a woman touched Callie's shoulder and broke her out of it, and Seldana wiped away tears and suddenly could see everyone. They contacted everyone else, and all of the people agreed to meet up at Callie's. Oh, actually, Seldana contacted Owen, so Soxy, Pip, and Owen met up with Callie and Seldana. Meanwhile, Syl at her workshop had a waking nightmare of Dub stuck inside her boulder of air shale, screaming in pain and terror, and she tried to break it open, and blood just came gushing out of the boulder, which was, pleasant imagery. Thanks, Logan. And then she immediately started heading over to Dub's house. When they got there, she discovered that the door to Dub's house was cracked open, which was very unusual. ended up going in and finding out from his parents that Dub was stuck in a nightmare, couldn't get out of it, was just recurring, screaming and kicking and uncomfortable, but they couldn't wake him. She went to Pinball's to try to look for help, but couldn't get a way in. When she got there, it was like there were no doors or windows on the tower. And then everyone at the temple met up and was talking about the things that had happened in their dreams. Saldana tried communing with her god. She asked 3 questions. Are we all still in a dream state? And the answer was no. Is this Donovan doing it to us? And the answer was no. And the last question was, is there a way for us to stop this affecting us? The book that she was writing the questions in sort of destroyed itself, and as it exploded, the word yes was formed. Saldana filled everyone in, and then Syl arrived at Callie's temple trying to find people. She told everyone about Dub, and the whole group rushed back over to Dub's house to try to check on him and see what they could do to help. When they got there, on the way there, things were strange, and Syl got turned around. And so Pip had to lead the way. And then when we finally got there, everything was very strange. The windows were open. The doors were open. It was cold and dark, like it was an abandoned house. Dub was still sleeping fitfully, but there were also 2 long decayed and dead corpses sitting in the chairs in his room instead of his parents. Soxy tried using divine sense and was overwhelmed by evil. And she also, her hand slipped into the wall somehow. That was a weird one. And the corpses started attacking the group. So there was a big fight with the corpses. Eventually, the group ended up sort of ending the corpses, but they grouped themselves together and morphed into this one giant suit of armor that had like a huge hole in the middle, like there was a piece of it missing. And it started fighting them. And they eventually were able to kill it, and as Syl dealt the final blow, it split open and started spewing out treasure. Part of the wealth arc. And as the creature disappeared, Dub's parents, who appeared in the corners, and they had sort of been passed out in the corner of the room, Dub was still asleep. And that was the first day of what would later be called the Week of Nightmares.
What a pleasant and just
pleasant is a relative term.
It was so nice. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So the next episode, which was our 100th episode, took place with Mari, Lark, Primeheart, Callie, Owen, and O'Sheen in attendance. The nightmares all continued into the next day, although this time, instead of the number 8, the number 2 and pairs were relevant. As the group woke and started moving around the city, also the waking nightmares continued. Mari was chased by a wolf. The nature temple became a desolate wasteland for O'Sheen. Lark was followed by a giant bear and set upon, finding himself being attacked by Foster and then eaten. Callie had to make the choice between stealing the book again or from her temple or leaving it alone. Owen consisted of seeing a stain while he was getting dressed, and as he tried to get it off, he found himself scratching through his skin. Again, everybody met up at Callie's temple, and the decision was made to go check on Dub and his parents because we hadn't heard from them, and we wanted to see if Dub was still asleep. Much to our sadness, Dub was unable to be found, as while we were en route, we were attacked by 2 large clouder of cats seeming to be corrupted by something. There was a brief scuffle, and we did eventually make our way out unscathed. When we were in the Pearl District on our way into Dub's house, suddenly the group couldn't find where we were going, and as most of us had never been to Dub's, we decided to head to Pinball's instead since we couldn't find where we were going. And as we were walking there, everything in the area surrounding it just appeared to be burnt, and the only thing standing was Pinball's tower. We thought it might have been because of the blade of the creature that was fought the day before, which we learned was called Maw Blade. As we make it into the tower, everything appears to be fine once again, and we decide to get Maw Blade out of the crate where it had been left, which was the blade we took off the creature the night before. As we're going to the crate, unfortunately, it starts moving, and we all fear that this blade, which appeared to have large teeth and been made from bone, was eating our magic items. And when we got the blade out of the box, we found that yes, it had been eating about half of the contents of our loot crate, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, we were so happy about that.
No. Lark decides to wrap the blade in a small rug, and the group decides we need to destroy this blade. And as we are about to, we are informed by an incredibly creepy voice that this Maw Blade is absolutely sentient, and without its help, there's no way we could defeat its old master. Lark uses divine sense and senses that this Maw Blade is the most evil thing he has ever encountered. Maw Blade reveals that he is one of 8, and they are known as devourers, cannibals. It eats things to live, and it insists that it has to be fed and to stay with someone, or else it will not help us defeat its master, who is known as Kalqua, the Eater of Dreams. It is a demonic lich that is coming in 3 days. Mari decides to be the one to take Maw Blade with her to be fed after both Lark and Callie are rejected. And that was the end of episode 100.
Okay, so episode 101 would normally have been on Aruna the 9th. We took a night off, and on Aruna the 10th, we were in the 4th day of the week of nightmares. All of the nightmares involved devastation of some kind. So the first night was 8, then we had twins. Now we're on devastation. Oh, no, sorry. The night before would have been devastations. And then the night of Aruna the 10th was breaking glass. So everyone had their nightmares, and then, of course, we went into the morning. Rosie's had a waking dream of her horse eating a grishk, which is terrifying. Nathan headed out with Mags. GB had a waking nightmare of putting Pearl into sort of the extra dimensional space in his head where familiars are stored, apparently. And then had this nightmare of basically Pearl like bursting her way out of his head, which is disgusting. Trigger warning for tonight's recap, by the way, for anyone who didn't catch that yet. Syl woke up at Dub's place. She'd spent the night in his room, and she went downstairs and saw a waking nightmare of Dub's dad wearing a butcher's outfit and offering her Dub's head fresh from the oven. So, all sorts of fun stuff. Connor's waking nightmare, very pertinent to the rest of the session, was that he saw a figure in the distance wearing a strange helmet riding a miniature horse. And this stranger definitely seemed dangerous. Oshin was not visited by nightmarish visions that morning. Mari had passed the blade off to Nathan because it ate too much, but it didn't like Nathan, so he passed it on to Rosie. And it wrapped itself around her and was acting as a helmet with a second mouth. So she had an even nastier bite attack than usual. Rosie, on her way toward the Green Iron Village to talk to Boss about building her a house out there, ended up having horrible visions and seeing the dead body of Wubura trying to grab at her and everything before finally making it to the village. So many notes. Connor got to the beer forge, and it was about an eighth full. Eights again. He talked with GB and Ivy, and then Syl arrived and told them that Dub hadn't changed. Oshin arrived, and they talked some more, and then Nathan joined them as well. Then they headed out to go do research on the Lich Calqua, the one that the Moblade said was coming. They went to the library, and on their way they ran into Rosie in her Moblade helm, and Connor was greatly disturbed by the fact that she resembled the image of the stranger he had seen in his nightmare. So he was really upset by that. And Moblade kept interjecting into the conversations, as sentient, scary blades do, talking about the coming of the Lich and the other Devourers. At the library, they met up with Kithra, the librarian, who knew the name Calqua, and she explained that Calqua was a female and that she had come to fear her. Kithra had come to fear her. Calqua meant being of the void, and Dub was actually a conduit for Calqua to come into this world. She said that most likely the reason she was targeting the city is that Calqua saw the benefit, though it was very little, honestly, that the party had gotten from Dub's visions as a debt that was owed to her. And so she was in town to collect. Not something we're excited about at all. The party talked to Moblade about his motivations outside the library after she asked them to leave. And about Calqua also. He was a little hesitant to give too much information. At one point, they talked about destroying the Moblade or imprisoning it eventually, and it struck out at Connor. It eventually told them that they would need it because it knew where Calqua kept his phylactery. He specifically said his, even though Kithra had said Calqua was female. The Moblade didn't want them to fully understand what Calqua would do or how Calqua would get there because it didn't want them to stop Calqua from showing up because it would damage Moblade's plans. So Moblade specifically was very obviously withholding information. He did give them a little more information when they offered to feed him something yummy, and Syl ended up offering him the little bits and pieces of New Goa hair shavings that she had that are raw air shale. And he gobbled those up quite happily and gave them a little more information. He told them that Calqua puts the phylactery inside the heart of the conduit. It would show up the morning before Calqua was coming, along with a small scar on Dub's chest, and it would stay there until Calqua removed it violently from his chest. So none of us want that to happen. The party tried to figure out how to get the phylactery out of Dub's chest, and the Moblade said that Calqua can show up in a lot of different ways based on the type of conduit that it was using. However, in this situation, it probably had something to do with all of those pictures that Syl was trying to puzzle together. The party would have to get the phylactery, feed it to the Moblade, and then kill the Lich. The Moblade also said that a ritual of transference would do the trick, but none of the party knew what that meant, so they went back in the library. Kithra explained that it would remove the phylactery from one person and put it into someone else. It would have to be a being of average human intelligence to get the ritual to work to remove the phylactery from Dub. So basically, the party could choose to sacrifice someone else instead of Dub, which was not ideal. She also informed the group that Calqua had been trying to become an avatar of Rinth, who is a spider goddess particularly worshipped by the Drow, and that Calqua had started trying to do this about 50 years ago. GB, realizing that the dream spell would allow them to talk to Dub, mentioned it out loud, and several party members saw Kithra's eyes kind of glance over at the safe that she had standing open. Rosie went over there and ended up stealing the box that Kithra had looked at, and the party left. Side note is that Nathan, Oshin, and Connor saw Rosie steal the box. Syl and GB did not. They ended up at Arlen's and bought a scroll of dream, and then outside the store, Rosie told them, oh, by the way, I stole this from Keithra. So Connor, Nathan, and O'Sheen hadn't said anything because they were kind of following Rosie's lead on the fact that she's the one that took it. They ended up back at Dubs, and GB began casting identification on the box. Meanwhile, the group noticed that the work Sil had done on the puzzle was even further along, even though she hadn't been there working on it, and Dub had not moved. The pieces, when Nathan used to detect magic, were just completely riddled with conjuration magic. And meanwhile, the box that Rosie had was invisible to detect magic when Nathan tried that. Similarly, GB's ritual failed, almost as if someone had counterspelled him when he tried to identify the box. Rosie removed the item and everyone discovered it was a nightcap. And as the party tinkered with the nightcap and tried to figure it out, another piece of paper slid into place on its own. So with them there, the puzzle was putting itself together. They figured out that the nightcap would let them cast Dream 1 time a week and then recharge based on the moon. So Sil put on the cap, lied down next to Dub, and thought of him and found herself in his dream. A lot of things happened in that dream/nightmare. The short version is she was able to talk to him and told him that he needed to be brave. He expressed that the only thing that mattered to him was Sil, because he thought she was dead in front of him, and that she was the only thing he'd ever cared about. And Sil told him to be brave and to stay still and not move and not fight it if he felt something painful, because we might have to cut the phylactery out of him. GB took the maw blade from Rosie, and it ended up turning itself into a helmet for him as well. The party dispersed, and then that night, as Sil was winding down, a wind slid through the window and pushed more pages together. And so ended day 4 of the week of nightmares.
Because that's not creepy at all.
Oh no, it's creepy as hell.
So on episode 102 of Rune of the 11th, we had GB, Sil, Soxy, Lark, Primeheart, and Finku, and the nightmares theme that day was spiders. It was the final day, I believe, of the week of nightmares, the day of Kalkua's arrival. More dreams are had by the entire party, and things are going very poorly. There is a few waking nightmares, and Finku, while desperately trying to cast his new Find Familiar spell, fails over and over before finally summoning an owl, a spider, though he'd been trying to summon an owl. He decides he'll remedy that later after being hurt several times in the initial trying to cast. Later that day, as Lark is walking through the woods in his dream state, he meets a turtle which is shambling towards him, and as he gets closer, he gets a vision of himself being killed as the turtle, and he was told, "My name is Din, and you killed me." Then the vision ended. It was very confusing. The group made their way over to Dub's house, where they were all getting ready to meet, still looking over the puzzle intently. A lot of the puzzle had been done, and she was still focusing on it as if it was all she could see. As Finku gets in, the Mawblade talks to him and recognizes someone who would be even more suited for him, potentially, and changes into a dagger. As dawn approaches, Soxy checks Dub and finds the wound and stitching leading to the phylactery in his heart. And at this time, Sil also is charmed and begins to be drawn towards the puzzle, and there's no hesitation as she just begins to pick up the pieces and put them down, one after another after another. Finku tries to hide one of the pieces to get Sil to slow down a little bit, but there was nothing that he could do. Sil just needed that piece to be done. As the picture is put together, it gains depth, and chest of the creature it looks as though it would fit perfectly with the Maw's blade, as if that suit of armor that was fought on the first night actually belonged to this creature. As GB casts a ritual telepathic spell, the creature enters the room, pulling itself out of the papers, and the entire house cracks, with the entire party falling into a realm that it came from. Lark and Finku ended up separated from the rest of the group, and they see a large castle which head towards it. They find a structure with spider legs keeping it sealed, and while Finku is able to open the first of the 4 spider legs without much issue, the next other 4s have to have items sacrificed to it in order to open them. While they are doing that, the rest of the group decides to try to remove the phylactery from Dub's heart. Mawblade tells the party that for the phylactery to be destroyed, it would cost either Dub's soul or someone who was close to him. And Syl goes quiet while thinking about that decision. After a while, Mawblade seems to get a little antsy and changes his tune, saying that anyone in the party will do. Lark decides that he will make the sacrifice and whispers to Primeheart to kill him. Primeheart, wanting to honor his brother's wishes, does summon the arrow, but his spell is countered by GB. While all of this is going on, Finku is alone and exploring more of the castle. He gave up most of his new spellcasting items from his new spellbook to get the locks to open, and inside is a drow woman statue, which also features a set of images showing their life and their reincarnations as they happen. Weapon, though, is always with them, becoming more and more similar to Mawblade. Along with it is people who wield the weapon after the ritual is complete. The last image shows all of the party except him being dead, with Syl sobbing over Dub's body. Finku, using the telepathy that GB casts, tells out that he doesn't trust the Mawblade, and it tells them of the images that he's seeing, believing the weapon itself is the phylactery. The group tell Lark they're not going to let him sacrifice himself, and Soxy begins to suggest that they all go see what these things that Finku are seeing. But suddenly, it begins to crumble, as if someone didn't want the party to go see those images. And instead, they decide to shove the Mawblade into 2 bags of holding to destroy it. As they do that, a huge, insurmountable number of cart-sized spiders catch up with them, and the group have to fight heroically and valiantly to make their way out of them. And all the while, Mawblade is cursing them and insulting their decision. As the weapon is being destroyed, GB feels a hand on his shoulder who says, "Good boy," and it's Dub. And Dub uses his newfound dream powers to shoot beams of light in every color of the rainbow, which destroys them. They all wake up together in Dub's room, and there's a small scar on his chest, ending the week of nightmares. It was such a powerful week. It was so good.
It was. One thing that didn't get covered in the notes is at the end, Logan told us that what we would find out over the course of the next couple of days is that Mawblade actually was the Lich. So what he'd been trying to do was have us sacrifice someone's soul to his phylactery to feed it. And by putting Mawblade into the 2 bags of holding, we destroyed that particular physical form and weakened him. But we hadn't actually killed the Lich because we had to do a special ritual to do that. And we didn't have any of that information. So we weakened him, but he's not dead. Which we find out later. Okay.
Everyone's favorite creepy sword.
Who eats way too much. He's like the garbage disposal from hell. Okay. So, episode 103, Aruna the 14th. This episode had Soxy, Finku, Nathan, Mari, Errol, and Rosie. Everyone had gotten a lot better sleep since the week of nightmares, but it still wasn't perfect. So everyone was unhappy when they were woken up at about 4 a.m. by the sound of hundreds of drum beats outside the city. Because basically everyone was like, we finally finished with the nightmares, what the fuck? Not surprisingly, the party members rushed out to find out what was happening. And they all were concerned because they started hearing rumors about a huge army at the south gates. They also knew from Owen that Soldan doesn't have a standing army, so they were prepared for battle if that needed to happen. They started hearing rumors of something called Vertigect, which Rosie recognized as meaning the Green Horde in Goblin, which usually referred to standing armies of at least 2,000 goblins. None of the rest of the party knew this until they met up with her, but that was concerning. They marched into position, and then they stopped outside of the city. They had long red banners with a white, broken, snake-like line on it, and Rosie recognized it as the symbol of her former goblin group, the Spinebreaker Horde. The guard had created a wall to keep everyone back, and they were trying to get the crowd to disperse, but the panic wasn't dispersing, because everyone knew there were thousands of goblins outside the gates. Mages also appeared and started putting up magical protective walls to block the exits so that it would at least be harder for the goblins to get in, and also to protect the people from going outside towards the army. At the south gate, Rosie messaged Owen to find out what the city was doing, and basically found out that they were trying to talk and figure it out, because this wasn't something they'd planned for, having, just only recently started creating new rules for the country. Errol wanted to investigate and go see what was going on outside the gates with himself and possibly a couple other sneakier people. But Soxy pointed out that that might be a bad idea, because if we aggravated the army, we might start them attacking. So the group decided to wait and hear from Owen and hopefully Afra or someone else that they knew on the council before making any rash decisions. Afra showed up, and she preferred Soxy's plan of not doing anything until they had figured out a plan. So they kept talking, and she and some of the guards started trying to get more people pushed back. And she said she was going to talk to the council and try to have our group take over things, but that we needed to try to stay calm and not do anything while she was figuring it out. Nathan used Mags' eyes as his familiar to scout to look at the goblin horde. They were in perfect ranks, and they were all standing at attention and very disciplined. And there were a bunch of other familiars and druids also flying over, trying to get intel. One of the squad leaders below bellowed something at another leader, and they threw off their cloaks and started pointing arrows at the creatures in the sky. So the goblins definitely had a level of discipline that Rosie did not remember. Nathan, with his perfect memory, was able to draw a quick sketch of the lines of where everyone was and what kind of numbers they had going on for the goblins. And then, Rosie and Finku talked to a lot of the civilians and were able to get them to sort of push back to safer areas, so that was good. As we waited, however, we had to deal with bad company showing up. Everyone's favorite assholes. And Castron, of course, said hello in his usual smarmy, awful, creepy way. And he and the others laughed at the fact that all of the goblins were grouped together, even though there's a huge army of them. Rosie politely asked Castron to wait to attack the goblins, since some of them were likely her family. And he started to say something crass and probably really irritating, but luckily Envarum stepped in and managed to smooth things through a little bit. They agreed to wait until information arrived from Hasko or Afra, or both, because at the moment no one in town had the contract yet to deal with the army. Nathan sent Mags over to Afra to try to get an update, and found her and the other council members talking and debating and kind of just taking forever to decide. So they kicked him out, and Afra called for a vote. Hasko showed up and agreed to, and approached the group. He greeted our group and said hello, and then talked with his people. Afra finally showed up with a decision. The council had agreed to send our group to talk to the goblins, including Rosie. And the goblins had put up a flag indicating they wanted to talk. So we took the same flag and stood outside and followed Afra's directions, which told us to walk toward them, not to walk toward them or make a move until they made the first move. So We stepped outside the gates, and then our group had to stand there for 5 minutes while the goblins did a bunch of army drills and showed off their savagery and skills for 5 minutes, which is so much fun. Eventually they finished, and we saw 6 goblins begin walking towards us, so we also walked towards them. We met sort of in the middle. As we approached, we saw that 2 of the goblins had swords and shields, so probably some kind of fighters. One had a staff and was standing towards the back. One had daggers. One was wearing full plate with a holy symbol, so either a paladin or a cleric, we weren't sure. And the last was carrying a lute, so, bard. At least most likely, those were what they were. They stepped forward and planted their flag and spread out in a line, so we did the same. Nathan planted the group's flag, and after everyone had lined up, Rosie greeted them, and the paladin started yelling out, "Honor fight," in Goblin. She tried to say she didn't want to fight, she just wanted to talk to them, but he kept calling out, "Honor fight." So finally, she agreed to the honor fight with the stipulation that the negotiations would happen afterwards. They agreed to make it to yield, not to death or anything awful, and the goblins and we formed a circle around them for the fight to start. This was where things got fun. So, Rosie had just recently learned polymorph, which, of course, the paladin didn't know. He had thought he was going to have an easy fight taking on Rosie. Instead, he had to fight a T-Rex because she polymorphed herself into a T-Rex and proceeded to munch and crunch the paladin. She managed to restrain him several times, and he dispelled her polymorph, and she recast it, and he dispelled it again, and she recast it again, and all the while she was doing damage to him, and he hadn't done anything to her yet. He dispelled it a third time, and she recast it again, and then he unleashed a wand of fireballs on her, which did a lot of damage to her T-Rex form, but none to her actual normal goblin form. He finally took a potion that turned him huge-sized and managed to cast another dispel, his last one, to try to stop her. She managed to manipulate and bluff her way into sort of hinting that maybe she had another polymorph, even though she didn't. And he agreed to a draw. By this point, he looked pretty beat up, and Rosie, in her goblin form, had taken 0 damage. She looked perfect. No issues at all. She was peachy. The bard stepped forward and started to negotiate. He introduced himself as Grit and said he'd actually heard of Rosie, his fellow bard. They knew of her sunflower song in particular. And he said that he and the Horde were there to negotiate helping Soldan with its war that was coming with the country to the north. Specifically, they wanted to offer their services as Soldan's army, since they knew we didn't have one. Obviously, they're going to want compensation in exchange, and probably land or something, because there's a lot of places that won't accept goblins. But nonetheless, this was very good news. So we went back in and informed Afra, who went to tell the council. And then we went to the Beer Forge to celebrate because Rosie had beaten the shit out of the paladin. And we just got Soldan an army. Not a bad day.
Not even a little bit of a bad day. Thank goodness for that, right?
Seriously, it could have gone so much worse. There were thousands of goblins outside the city.
Yeah, I could have. So episode 104 had Syl, Primeheart, Oshin, Pip, Lark, and Callie. It was a big morning for Callie. It was her first official meeting as the guild representative, and let me tell you how it went. She tried very hard to sway both Haskell and Meryl to voting for the Sebrosarium's policy on magic items, but unfortunately wasn't able to convince them. Afra knew that she had had a hard fight ahead of her to do such a thing, but they had both been hoping. The 3 adventure groups also split up which areas of the city that they were going to claim, with our group claiming the mountains, the Birchfield claiming the forest, and Haskell's group claiming the ocean. Haskell did let it slip that he knew that the only reason that Callie's group was interested in the mountains potentially was the Goa who lived up there, and that there was a contract potentially coming up to cleanse the mountains of the threat, which of course panicked Callie into taking the mountains even harder of a stance on that. After that goes on, everybody meets up at the beer forge, and a loud noise is heard at Pinball's tower when they all go to say hello. And what happened was that Pinball had been doused in several vivid colors of alchemical agents as Sparks, one of the awakened kittens, had gotten a little bit bored because Oshin had taken Glitter to the beer forge and maybe dumped all of them on Pinball's head by accident. So there was much arguing at that point. Yeah, that's right, Sparks. You were in trouble. Well, that's sorry. Are you done? Okay, that's what I thought. Pinball had let the Oshin know that he had potentially found a way to get Trey fixed, and it was to go see the Gollemancer out in... Oh my gosh. Kyros, the country to the north that Cinderhaven is teetering on the verge of war with. The group were very, very nervous, but there was a teleportation circle that could get us there without much issue. The teleportation circle was located in a library, and so the group hopped on the teleportation circle in Pinball's tower, learning the sigils so that they could jump back through to this side in a pinch. And as they are teleported across the plains, taking a large crate with Trey inside, they land in the middle of a militaristic religious ceremony in front of a huge crowd. Heavy green banners are hanging on a dais bearing the image of an inverted Ankh. And the person speaking is talking about loyalty to the one true God, Guyena. Obviously, this was a problem.
Yep.
The group slowly and awkwardly extricates themselves from the temple and tries to go and find where the Gollemancer is. And while they are searching, Oshin receives a sending from Pinball that saying he cannot locate one of the two kittens, the two awakened kittens. In a panic, the group open up the box and find Sparks hiding inside. Very lucky that he had enough air to survive the trip and journey over. So the group continues with Sparks hiding in Primeheart's hood to go and find the Gollemancer. Everywhere they look, there are shops that are closed, boarded up, and every other shop seems to have this same strange inverted Ankh in the corner. When they go inside different stores, they're met with people wearing a strange pin made of bone with the same symbol. And when asking about the Gollemancer, we learned that Gollemancy is now forbidden, as are members of the Dragon Sentinel, which Callie is a member of, and that we might be just out of luck as we are all very awkward, and whatever we have done is causing quite an alarm. It's important that anyone who might be tested in their loyalty alert their guards immediately after contacting with someone strange. So as we finally get caught between some guards, we eventually hear a hiss from one of the other members of the city who is not loyal, quote unquote, and takes us to see the Gollemancer. He manages to fix Trey using some items from the Feywild, including all of Oshin's fur from their arms as a conduit to reconnect Trey to a different plane for powering, connecting him to the Feywild instead. We also met the version of Arland that lives in this city, who is closed himself off from our Arland and is very much one of the loyalists, and we were very worried. Luckily, we were able to escape with the help of the Golemancer inscribing the teleportation circle for us so we could get back home. And as we got home, Oshin was able to reactivate Trey, who then caused wild magic surges when activating his powers. But at least we have Trey back. And he seems a lot more bubbly and upbeat than he did before.
Yes, probably something to do with the fact that his power is now coming from the Feywild instead of the Shadowfell.
Maybe.
Just, maybe a factor. Also, I have to admit, I love the irony of the fact that we're now talking about awakened kittens and your cat is meowing and mine is too and is also crawling all over me while we're trying to do this.
Well, the cat, she has minds of her own.
Okay, so episode 105, Aruna the 16th. This episode had Oshin, Mari, Nathan, Callie, Primeheart, and Soxy. It started off with the usual morning of everyone doing their things. The biggest one that's the most important, really, is that Callie went to the library to do some more research on Guyena, but was unsuccessful. And she was told that certain gods have different names depending on the location. So it might be called something different in Cinderhaven. So at this point, we don't, at this particular episode at least, we don't know which god or goddess that actually refers to. Okay, at the Beer Forge, everyone met up and they discussed what to do. The kitten woke up. Oshin had glitter with him and started paying attention to everything, including what to do next. And Callie challenged Glitter to chase some chickens back at her house. The group decided that they would speak with Wabura's corpse that day, since it was being kept at Skyroot the Skyroot Estate, which is Primeheart's house. And they headed over there. Glitter began playing with a couple of the chickens, and Primeheart cast Speak with Dead on the body and asked it 5 questions. Did you leave your friend's pelt at Zeknar's home? The answer was yes. Why did you leave it? The answer was pain. Who pointed a gun at you most recently? The answer was Din, even though we know Din is dead. Or was dead. Who is Din? The answer was a friend. Why would Din want to kill you? The answer was pain. So the group discussed the different meanings of the answers and what this could possibly translate to. And they wondered whether or not Din was included in Zeknar's book at all, but Soxy wasn't there yet. Soxy had heard from Ivy where the group was, so she made her way over there. And poor Glitter was shocked by the sight of Soxy, because this is the first time he'd seen her since he'd been awakened.
I'm sorry, I ate your friends!
Yeah, he screamed out that he was sorry he ate her friends, meaning the other bugs he's attacked, and he went and hid somewhere. The group talked about the answers and what to do next, and they decided to, Primeheart, Nathan, and Callie, who had not been at the initial meeting with Zeknar when the group had made him angry, decided to go talk to him. When they got there, at first he didn't want to let them in, but they kept talking about how they were trying to plan for another trip to Lamina and all this kind of thing. And eventually, Zeknar let them in and they talked a little bit. Din had been the Farosh friend of Wabura, who grew up with the turtle. He was an accomplished tracker and shaman. And then on the first expedition, he'd been killed, and Din's body was found by travelers and brought to Zeknar, who was also lost in the woods and betrayed by someone, or at least that was how it sounded based off of what he told us. So what we knew is that Din was killed by Wabura over a fight over some sort of shiny rock or gem. And we also knew that guns weren't used on the first expedition, so we don't know exactly how the murder happened. Zeknar also said that he had been on 2 trips to Lamina Island, not 1. His book only ever speaks of the 1 trip, though. and each had cost at least 150,000 gold. So he gave them that as a this is kind of how much we would need to fund a trip if we went sort of situation. Nathan offered to map Lamina Island, and they got ready to leave. Zeknar said he just wanted to return home, and the group promised to help him. Back at Skyroot Estate, they shared their findings, and Soxy brought up Zeknar's staff, which had a sphere of air shale on it, which could have been a potential lead to the rock that Wabura and Din had been fighting over. The group contemplated several different theories, most of which baffled Primeheart, as he had no knowledge of magic in the capacity by which they theorized. And then they eventually came to an agreement that Zeknar might be Din in disguise, and they left for Cinderhaven. They got there and went to Arlen's shop, where the mechanical birds screamed at Primeheart, Callie, and Oshin. When Arlen interrogated them, we found out that the shop in Kairos, that is also Arlen's, has been cut off from the rest of the network. There are certain shops that he's cut off because of them either being too divergent in their views or doing something shady that he didn't agree with, so he cut them off from the main network. They talked about different items. In particular, Soxy asked about a bag of holding and whether or not he had any, because, wow, do we need one now? He offered a bag of holding for rent, with the fee being 4,000 gold pieces, which we didn't have, so we couldn't take him up on it. But they purchased a scroll of Locate Creature so that they could go back and see if Zeknar and Din were in fact the same person. They also swung by the council hall, where Callie informed Afra that they were planning with the scroll, but that it wasn't for profit or anything, and so she said it should be fine. It wouldn't violate the rules about who has what area. And also she shared that she'd had a meeting with a man named Jin, who is an elderly half-elf, and he'd been to Lamina Island 25 years or so before. So he was staying in Bilgeport and was potentially going to be working with the group. Anika, also there at the council chambers, talked to Nathan about the fact that he hadn't really been doing a whole lot of work lately, even though he'd spent some money, and that he needed to pay more attention to that. It wasn't a, I'm kicking you out or anything. It was more like a, hey, please pay attention to what you're doing. Mari cast augury to question whether or not our plan would work. And as Oshin handed off glitter to Pinball, it showed a favorable outcome. So it showed just how sensitive that can be, because even whether or not the cat was present could have made or broken our ability to do what we wanted. The party made its way back to Zeknar's. Mari used the Locate Creature spell and turned herself into an owl so that she could fly over. And as she did so, she sensed Din inside the house. And then Zeknar stepped out to go fetch water, and she sensed Din in his spot. So it seems as though he is Din. We don't know all the wheres and whys and hows, but we know he is Din. As the party walked back, they discussed the situation. Wabura was killed at his camp outside of the city limits and was dragged inside the limits at towards the Skyroot estate. And Zeknar's home is also outside the city limits. So one possibility is definitely that he wanted to make sure someone found it so that some sort of investigation or something would happen. One thing that has the party concerned is the fact that Din was a white Farosh, just like Pip. So we do have concerns over whether or not Zeknar might have been trying to frame Pip by doing so, because if anyone questioned Wabura's body, like we did, and it said that Din did it, they might assume that he had mistaken Pip for Din because of the similarities in their appearance. And we know Pip didn't do it, so we were not happy with that idea.
Exactly. So in episode 106, the group had a little bit more of a leisurely day, with the group being Owen, Sil, Oshin, Connor, GB, and Lark. The group met up at the Beer Forge. Oshin having Sparks with him for the day. Oops, sorry, I accidentally hit the wrong button. I hate that when I do that. Sorry about that. Sorry guys, I don't know what happened with my computer for a second. There we go. The group all met up, and while they're all talking, Sparks shows interest in the School of Invention, and Connor notices Sparks slipping away towards the corner of the beer forge that has all the boxes stacked up on the extra sage. When getting over there to investigate, Sparks had his head stuck in a hole, and in order to get him out, Ivy had to click a button, and all the crates opened to show weapons, potions, magical items, and a trap door. Ivy had this prepared just in case we ever needed it during the rebellion. As they're sitting there laughing and enjoying themselves, Syl heard a voice in her head. Syl, we need you. There's some sort of infection. It's on everyone and it's turning us to rot. It looks different. Instead of allured, this time it was first reaching out to her. And they all got up and hurried out to the mountains outside of the city that Callie had claimed for the group as their territory. As they got to the entrance, the gnarled entrance seemed empty. There was no guards on the cliff, the main caverns were empty, and a chalky ash seemed to be covering everything, with large chunks of charcoal. Syl stayed outside the cave in case the interior was infectious, because no one wanted Syl to be hurt, and the rest of the group went inside the interior. As they went around, they found Goa covered in ash with missing limbs, some half covered in ash, all moving very slowly, but they realized that this infection has come on fast, and these Goa have minutes, maybe, to live as the rot is basically disintegrating their air shell. As they move around, they do find one person laying on a bed, a small Goa who looks very charismatic. His name is Wisp. But he remembers his previous life, saying that they were doing some sort of experiments. And the group finds out that this is Earl Goodsbury. He had gone to the Goa, had been turned into Wisp to escape his memories, and due to the tinkering and experimentation, even he couldn't escape them. As the group talked to him, he passed away in front of them, and the group decides not to say anything to Saldana to avoid upsetting her, at his request. Eventually, the party finds First and the other 6 Goa in a sealed, locked room, and First explained that there was a rot that came through a green, thick fog in the entrance, and that he determined that they were the only ones important enough to save. It would be too dangerous to try and save anyone else. Clearing a path from the entrance to just these 6 people would take hours for Syl to come into. Meanwhile, Syl and Lark were outside listening to the conversation through GB's teleportation, and a Goa with an airshell mask approached from the cavern's entrance. It was Orem. He turned to Syl and said, "Do I have your attention yet?" Orem's face was covered in erosion marks, probably from the disease that had just destroyed the second Goa nation. He viewed the Goa that had died as abominations, and he expressed that he wished they could have died again. Syl and Lark ran at Orem, and a fight ensued. He threw down vials, creating the dark sphere's fog, and Skill skittered to a halt to avoid it. They engaged Orem, and eventually the rest of the group joined the fray. The rest of the group fought and then pinned Orem inside the fog, causing his mask to break as the party. But before he dropped, he folded in on himself and disappeared without casting any magic. Syl collected the pieces of airshell that had broken off of Orem's mask, and it was pure. Somehow it had seemed to have enchanted through magical properties without actually transmuting it. Wit and Al eventually left and walked out of the front of the cave. They told the group that first took the others, kicked them out of the psychic link, and left because they chose not to follow him. They said that they disagreed with him, that anyone who could determine who was too important to save was not someone they wanted to follow. And they didn't really want anything left in the cave, and so the party was welcome to it all if they wanted. So the party went through and found many magical items and about 40,000 gold. Unfortunately, Earl had completely converted to ash. They found a signet ring and Lark kept it. And Owen found a nearby water and sang an elvish song to commemorate the fallen king. Arriving back at Pinball's, Syl sent to her mother and saying, Orem killed all the bonded Goa. There's only a handful left, and he escaped. Talked about going home. Syl's mother replied that they had Orem's body returned there, and it is safe and everything is okay. And Syl made sure that she knew about the green fog that caused the blight. Syl's mom promised that she would be careful and that she loved Syl and they would understand. And that was the very sad episode of 106.
Yeah, that was a sad one. Side note too, I remember this because I was watching that episode when everyone was fighting and dealing with it. Earl was particularly sad because the Goa had told him he would forget everything when they turned him. But, which honestly, this didn't surprise anyone, I don't think, considering all the things they've done before. Thanks for first decisions. They had promised the group that they would talk to the people about trying to save memories. Well, Earl specifically had wanted to forget, and they told him he would, and then they made him one of their experiments where they tried to make him remember. And he did.
So he did.
Yeah. That was shitty. Extra shitty. Okay. Episode 107. This episode had Primeheart, Syl, Callie, Finku, GB, and Pip. Let's see. So they went about their normal morning stuff. Wit and Allure are staying with Syl until anything else is figured out. For now, they're staying with her. The party met up at the Beer Forge, and the only other people there were 4 of the goblins, a paladin in full plate with a sword, Grit, the bard, and then the 2 fighters. GB introduced himself, and Grit explained that the goblins hadn't realized that it wasn't normal for a military force to show off their might before introducing themselves. That's why they had done their introduction the way they did. He also said that Rosie probably came from a splinter group of the Spinebreaker Horde, and that most of the Spinebreakers were near Kiros, and Kiros, when Kiros decided to pursue war against Cinderhaven. So the war was coming for Cinderhaven. They left because they had heard about opportunities to lend their services to Cinderhaven and Soldan, and also because Kiros was not receptive to their kind. They were racist and did not like the goblins.
Poo on Kiros.
Indeed. Let's see. And then the goblins left. Finku introduced himself to an older fisherman that came in to join them, and he turned out to be Jin, the person that Afra had told them about. He said that part of his stipulation for navigating the party would be that they didn't leave the port city. I'm not sure if it was that he wouldn't leave the port city or that the party wouldn't.
He doesn't leave the port city. He wants to stay.
Gotcha. That makes more sense. Jin also explained that Lamanna was very dangerous. He said Wabura had paid him to help Din, his friend, and that Din was a Farosh that was resurrected into a dwarf's body, who then skinned his Farosh form to wear as a cloak, so that he would always remember. So what this means is that we are correct, and Zeknar is in fact Din. Pip said that he wanted to go back to Lameda to try to search for his family, and described giant footprints and destruction that had been all he found of his people when he returned from a hunt. Jin said he was familiar and that the giants that Pip described to exist there, they had attacked his party on the last day they were there. Jin told Pip that where on Lamina Island he had seen the giants and made comments about the giants' legs rising above the treetops and being as thick as the thickest tree trunks. So they're gigantic giants. And that they were likely at least a month off from heading to Lamina at best. Then he excused himself. At this point, to discuss more about the information they had about Zeknar and Din and Wabura, and they tried to figure out what to do. At the moment, they decided that they really didn't know how to deal with the gray morality of the situation, considering Din had been killed by Wabura, and then Zeknar, who was actually Din, had turned around and killed Wabura, so it's all sorts of back and forth and confusing. The party then went over to Arlen's and started asking him about their version of himself over in Kiros. That was when he filled them in a little more on the fact that he really is all of the Arlens. However, he had versions of himself in some cities that were forbidden because they were not part of the network and they did things that he didn't approve of, so he'd cut them out. And that people that turned away from the way that Arland himself in Cinderhaven wanted to do things were the ones that were cut off. So any version of Arland that basically goes dark or more evil, it gets cut off from the main network. The party went to the Chalice and ended up fighting some void giants, which for the first time did not go well for them. And so they ended up having to forfeit, basically. The party got their butts kicked. Then they went back to Pinball's Tower, and they found Finku's magic boot inside of Mo for some reason. And they found out
Rosie had hidden it there.
Rosie had put it there. Yeah. And then they spent the rest of the evening hanging out with Mo.
Which is the best bean.
Indeed.
Episode 108 with Soxy, Errol, Callie, Syl, Nathan, and Saldana saw a interesting morning rise with plenty of rumors about something happening in the forest to the northwest. Humanoid creatures that had been seen coming through the woods in hordes. They were shambling with dark purplish skin. They had attacked animals along the way, and they would likely have to pass by Prime Hearts and Green-Eyed Village to get to the city. Al decided to go with Syl for the day, and Afra and Callie spoke about trying to Callie's desire to help the city out by giving donations. As the group met at the beer forge, Binksy came in riding waffles and tied her up under the table. Errol met Saldana, and the group decided to investigate the rumors about the shambling hordes, but did check with Meryl to make sure that they weren't stepping on any toes. And they made their way out into the forest. As they got to the Green Iron Village, they noticed only a few goblins there as they were packing up, and they spoke with Jasper as Lark wasn't home. The inside of the treehouse expansions are absolutely gorgeous. The goblins have outfitted the house very nicely, and Jasper had already heard about the horde from some of her friends in the city, saying they were very thin and they looked like they were starving. And her information said that they were Braith. They were starving, mostly naked and animalistic. They weren't speaking to anybody, or at least no one could talk to them. So as the group decide to make things ready for the Braith refugees that they are expecting, Al looks out the window and says that they are there, 2 hours ahead of schedule. And as Nathan sends maggots out to look around at these Braith, he realizes that these Braith don't have hair. There's no tentacle hair or anything like that. But they have plenty of tentacles over their mouths. They're illithid, not Braith. Callie left to warn Primeheart and the rest of the city, as Tessa was not feeling well and therefore had to sit out the rest of the session, unfortunately. And Errol stepped in to go into his symbiotic entity known as Colony. He goes to speak with the Mind Flayers just to make sure, and the rest of the party, just to make sure that they are not there to attack, as they're all looking very gaunt and very weak. It was very hard for the group to communicate with everyone, but finally Errol was able to get through to them in deep speech and ask them what they wanted. The static got a little louder in his head as they were trying to speak to him telepathically until they finally were able to get someone to actually speak. They realized that these Illithid had been enslaved and freed by the heroes of Cinderhaven. They didn't need meat. They needed meat. They didn't necessarily need to eat brains like what we would normally think of Illithid. It just needed to be food. So Saldana and Jastra spoke again, although it was very tense, as Jastra was under the assumption that she was trying to give Saldana the space that she so desperately wanted, and Saldana felt that Jastra was just giving her a cold shoulder, unfortunately making the miscommunication between them a little bit worse. Finally, food is fetched, and the Illithid are able to finally eat, and they are so hungry. The Illithid fed the weakest first, and then the leader ate last. The leader introduced himself as Slethralach, and they wanted to seek asylum in Cinderhaven. That is the end of that episode.
Yeah, one important thing to note was how weird it was for the people in the party that knew about Illithid. They knew that it was strange for the Illithid to be so magnanimous and feed the weak ones first, rather than keep the strong and just get rid of the weak ones. We find out more about why these Illithid might be like that in the following evening. And yeah, it was interesting. So episode 109, Aruna the 22nd, had Pip, Callie, Soxy, O'Sheen, Owen, and Lark. Lark and Jastra had moved to the parishioners' chambers in Callie's temple to get away from Green Iron Village, since that's where Slethralach and the other Illithid are hanging out for now. And then they had spoken with the city council regarding his people wanting to apply for asylum. So the city council hasn't made a final decision, but they're likely to say yes. And then the Illithid would be somewhere in the vicinity of Cinderhaven. It hasn't been 100% decided yet.
I do believe that the caves have been offered, though, as a potential place for them.
I know we talked about it amongst the players. I am not 100% sure it's actually been offered to the city or to the Illithid, but it was discussed as players.
Callie mentioned it to Afra offhandedly.
Gotcha. Okay. Callie went and spoke with Afra regarding the conversation with Slethralach, which had been difficult because of translators. And they had talked also about the fact that more refugees would be arriving soon. The city would be able to accommodate some, but any more than 800 would be really hard. And with the threat of war looming, the council wasn't sure whether they wanted to resort to mercenaries and refugees only to fight on behalf of the city. At the Beer Forge, the group met up and tried to talk about what to do next, and they decided to go speak with the refugees, the Illithid refugees, with Owen as the translator. So they got there, and he was able to speak to them in Undercommon with Slethralach, who said that they had been freed by the heroes of Cinderhaven. They'd been freed from captivity and slavery by the heroes of Cinderhaven, but they didn't know who the heroes of Cinderhaven were. And then when asked about Rinth, they reacted very negatively and wanted to know whether or not we had any followers of Rinth in town, which of course the group said, no, as far as we know, we don't. But, who knows? Slethralach said that the refugees are seeking a safe place to live, and they came to the city of their saviors in hopes of a better life. They'd been freed weeks ago and had been walking ever since. And when trying to describe who held them captive, Slethralock couldn't really do it because of a strange fugue state they had, but also couldn't put the images into our brains either. So what he said he could do was a ritual that would show us. So he said he would need 2 brains from the same type of creature that were no more than an hour old, and 2 linked silver rings to do the ritual. So we set out to go acquire those things as well as some more food. And the party consulted with each other and discussed the option of letting the refugees take up residence in the recently vacated Goa mines. So it is something that's been discussed, but no final decision has been made that I'm aware of. The group split the party to get some stuff done faster, since we were on a time crunch. So Callie, Owen, and Soxy went to grab food for them, winter blankets, and some more clothing because they didn't really have anything but rags. Meanwhile, Pip, Lark, and O'Sheen went to the Chalice to choose creatures for us to fight because we decided that if we were going to have to fight something anyway, we might as well maybe make some of our money back. So they went and did that and tried to find creatures that might be a good option. If we couldn't find anything, the backup plan was livestock. They decided for us to fight the herd of stench cows, which are creatures twice the size of a cow, but seemingly crossbred with skunks or somehow. And we were able to dispatch the stench cows with flair and harvested a couple of their heads to take back for the ritual. Slethralock was very pleased with the delivery of stench cow brains, and Soxy also made arrangements to have the rest of the meat and the rest of the brains and everything shipped over to the Illithid refugees for food. And he took one of the brains and cast the ritual, and everyone had to eat a piece of the brain. O'Sheen, who doesn't eat meat, put a piece of the skull in his mouth instead. And then suddenly everyone had a vision. Owen, Soxy, and Lark were each in sparsely furnished cages, and they were all Illithid. And they recognized themselves, but they were in Illithid bodies, not in their own. O'Sheen, Callie, and Pip found themselves similarly outfitted in strange Illithid bodies, but they were in a tunnel with mining picks. And they continued to dig. Lark and Soxy were able to construct rudimentary holy symbols and get out of their cells. And then they proceeded to try to get the key. But the pain was so unbearable that they couldn't really approach it. So Soxy built a pole out of slats from her bed and tried to get the key that way. However, as they did that, bad things happened. Meanwhile, Callie tried to push past the pain to see how far she could go, and her head exploded. Specifically, tentacles appeared from the air, and a slurping noise was heard, and then her body dropped lifeless to the floor. Owen persuaded one of the Illithid to talk to him and found out the master is everywhere, that the Illithid had always been there, it was their life and their punishment, and that the master only wanted their loyalty. Soxy got the key with the makeshift pole, but as soon as she got it free, her head exploded, and Lark and Owen saw the tentacles again. Lark tried to grab the tentacles when they were attacking Soxy. Owen cast vicious mockery on the tentacles, and both of their heads exploded. Pip and O'Sheen got through the shift change and then found the bodies of their friends. They tried to go to the keys, and his head exploded, and so on and so forth.
Lots of head explosions.
Yes. Once everyone had died, they all woke up. It was very Groundhog's Day style. And they just kept repeating the same days over and over and over. It didn't matter if they were all together. It didn't matter if they were separate. It didn't matter what they did. If they didn't follow the rules that the other Illithid had to follow, they died. And if any one of them died, they would all wake up the next morning. Same thing, starting over from the very beginning. So finally, they hit a point where they just kept going. Each of them, though, did have some sort of item to keep them sane. Some sort of totem item to keep them sane. Soxy had her holy symbol that she had carved. Lark made himself a teddy bear out of the straw in his room. Callie made herself a little dragon's tooth. Pip made himself a fork. Owen had made himself like a rudimentary drum. And O'Sheen had a druid crafted a flower, and then he pressed it, so he had a dried flower that he kept with him. Finally, one day came where someone stepped a little too far, and the punishment didn't happen. And the weird itch that they always had was gone. They regrouped, and they figured out that the master wasn't paying attention to them for once. So they all started trying to escape. They realized that their totems, along with the absence of the master's full influence, had given them some kind of control over everything. And they arrived in a room where they saw the master, all his tentacles and everything, attacking someone through a portal. So half of the master's body was through a portal. And O'Sheen, Owen, and Soxy, who'd all been at the portal fight where they closed the portal to the Shadowfell, recognized the tentacles as the master's tentacles. So in a very real way, the group was fighting the monster on one side of the portal and on the other. At this point, though, they had realized they could affect things where they were as the illithid selves, and so they started using their items. Soxy smashed her holy symbol into the ground, and it turned into a mace as she did so, and it caused the whole room to shake, and stalactites fell and pierced the master's flesh. Callie prayed for protection over her friends, and divine armor in the different metallic dragon colors appeared on everyone. Lark transformed himself into a huge bear made of straw and started attacking the master. Owen was surrounded by blue flame and uttered "No masters," and lightning and force just attacked the creature. O'Sheen rushed forward and began to claw at the tentacles and just ripped them apart while his hands seemed to glow with this bright, radiant energy. Pip conjured a huge dinner table and started stabbing his fork into the tentacles and just winding them up like spaghetti. And eventually, the master was banished. And one thought appeared in all of the illithid minds of the party, and that was Cinderhaven. Everyone appeared back in their normal bodies in the refugee camp, and Slethrilok explained that they now understood what his people had gone through, that they had been the captives of one of the avatars of the King of Secrets and had been freed by the heroes of Cinderhaven. And of course, now the party knows for sure they are the heroes of Cinderhaven that Slethrilok and his people had come searching for. But there's many different avatars of the King of Secrets. They'd only killed one. So, I believe
8
it was
of them.
Yeah. Owen said, "One down." Soxy said, "And more to go." And Lark said, "We'll kill them all."
It was such a good episode. It was so
Yes.
good. It was such a good episode. I was so happy at the end of it.
That was a really good episode.
Alrighty, episode, let's see here, are we in 110, yes?
Yes.
I forgot to scroll down. Oh, that's right, we reached level 10 at the end of that session. Woo-hoo.
We did indeed, which was awesome.
So, episode 110 had Pip, O'Sheen, Saldana, Owen, Callie, and Primeheart.
Oh, you cut out, Tessa.
You know, this computer of mine is driving me bananas today. So, some of the group were a little quiet after the events of yesterday. We had found out that when we arrived back, we all had kept the totems that we had created there, leading us to realize that it had not been a vision, it hadn't been a dream. It had been very, very real. And while the trauma of that wouldn't stay with us for long, at least not on a level that would affect us negatively, there are some lingering memories that do affect us a little bit. O'Sheen's morning is turned completely upside down when Glitter and Sparks get into a fight, and Sparks uses prestidigitation to turn his brother purple. Pimble admitted that maybe teaching Sparks prestidigitation wasn't the best idea, but it was only a cantrip, right? Owen woke up with a strange bedfellow. Mawblade had reappeared, and while it wasn't up to his full capacity, it was definitely him. He didn't hear any speech, though, so he left to go have a conversation with Ash at the library before it opened. And he learned that this was not the first time that Mawblade had chosen one of Ash's champions, and he recommended destroying Mawblade. Allura arrived at the beer forge with the rest of the group, and Oshin brought Glitter, who had then been turned green by his brother on the way out the door, who shared that he wanted to learn how to be super sneaky. Owen shared his predicament, and the group decided to bring Afra into the mix to have him destroy Mawblade. Glitter decided that what he wanted more than anything was a pair of pants. And so we learned the pants song. Pants, pants, I'm getting some pants, 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 I'm getting some pants, 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 I'm getting some pants, I'm getting some pants today. Which then infected everyone's brain for the next 3 days as we all incessantly sang the pants song. So Mo is commissioned to design pants for Glitter. Glitter is very excited because his brother doesn't have pants. And the group asks Afra to meet them at the guild hall so they can discuss how to murder Mawblade. And as he was discussed and his name was said 20 times, Mawblade came back into existence in his full glory. Ew. And we learned that the only way to destroy Mawblade is really to just let him starve to death, denying him of the delicious souls that he wants so very badly. It's very, very gross. Saldana decides to cast Legend Lore and learns this stanza. Winter breeds blood, summer breeds pain, spring breeds devotion, autumn breeds fervor. Hatred and dread are the road laid before he who accepts the Mawblade. Only in hands of the betrayer shall the whispers stop and the light shine forth. Afra shares that when Victor worked with the king, he was just a demon, and Donovan did most of the communing. Mawblade says that there's another devourer in the city named Silver Echo, which the group realizes is the mirror ring that Pimple had way back in the beginning in episode 1. Holy moly, Logan, playing the long game much?
Yeah, your husband's good at that.
Yeah, he is. He did still insist, however, that he is needed to help defeat the King of Secrets. And Owen shares his past of going AWOL from Kyros. Afra offers Steve Mawblade. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I started getting young. Afra decides to help us keep Mawblade safe in the Subrosarium and lock it away so we can figure out what we're going to do. And we learn that Donovan is potentially another avatar now of the King of Secrets, needing to be dealt with. But is Mawblade telling the truth? Who knows? He's a sneaky little bastard sword.
Yeah, not so sneaky and not so little, but yeah, definitely a bastard.
Yeah. Callie, Primeheart, and Pip go and get a tour of the Subrosarium. They discuss Zaknar Fettel's being Din and try to determine his motives. Oshin communes with nature and his tone shown the planar influences of the city. Feywild and even the Shadowfell still have a hold there. When asked about are there powerful fiends nearby, he is shown Moe's Tower and told that one resided below, a silent killer destroying lives and minds with leaving nothing behind. And when asked where is Donovan, he was shown the Green Iron Village, specifically the tree houses. Donovan was not there, but he did reside there, is a very confusing question. Owen went into the library to speak with Ash again and learned that the previous champion was also an owner of Mawblade and had taken it up and failed. The last champion's name was Lazir Dunhurst, an ancestor of Owen's mother who was lost in their journey, and a fact that Ash impressed was not present within Owen's person. Before he made his way away, Oshin and Ash shared their feelings of platonic love for each other, which was very, very sweet. Saldana decided to venture to the Eternal Archive, the Knowledge Temple, and cast legend lore about the King of Secrets. She learned to speak his name is to invite misfortune, whispered in the halls of kings and peasants. Old men and young want to know him, and he wishes nothing but the love of her. We think her is probably Rinth. As she casts Commune to speak with her deity, she's whisked off to an empty classroom with a chalkboard and writes out her questions, first in Celestial. And the voice in response grades her questions and her writing with the snarkiest of attitudes, giving a C-, a C+, and finally, the final question is met with a question that should have been asked was, who is the King of Secrets trying to impress? That's a terrifying thought. Personally, I think it's Rinth. The group meets back at the guild hall to share their findings, and Afra discovers that the Mawblade is its own phylactery, which essentially made it immortal. She suggested the only way to destroy it is to starve it to death, when we learned that Mawblade originally went mad because someone fed it air shale. Much like we did earlier, a few episodes ago.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. She says to follow the clues and study them. And before settling in for the night, Oshin asks Pimble about the previous owner of the Ring of Magic Reflection. And he shares that the ring's owner is Janald, and she'd be coming to town soon. And that's where we ended that episode.
Okay, so episode 111. Let's see. Syl, GB, Oshin, Nathan, Primeheart, and Connor. And this was Aruna the 24th. So we started off the morning in the city, currently calm, no issues for the moment. We know how long that lasts. Everyone met up at the Beer Forge, and they decided that they were going to speak with Zeknar. So they went out to Zeknar's place and got there and knocked on the door. Let's see. So Primeheart and Nathan knocked on the door, but the rest of the party hung back, and Syl and Connor climbed a tree so that they could try to see into the house. Syl and Connor made it to the top of their tree, while Primeheart and Nathan sat on stumps talking to a hag.
Hag was disguised as Zeknar Fettles.
Okay. That got left out of the notes. A hag disguised as Zeknar Fettles. Disguised as Zeknar. Fixing notes as we go. And then Nathan realized that Zeknar had just lied to them about not knowing anything. And the illusion that fooled them into thinking this was Zeknar's cabin disappeared, and the hag attacked them. Pearl sat on Glitter throughout the fight to keep him from getting into it and getting hurt. The hag was fought and eventually ended up running away, but it summoned a Hydra before it did. And so the group was fighting the Hydra, even though the hag had run off. Let's see.
Fun times.
Yeah, they were eventually able to kill the beast, and then they decided to head back to Cinderhaven. They got to the Beer Forge, and they were relaxing, and Glitter revealed that he had wild magic in his blood, somehow innately disguising himself as GB, and then suffering a wild magic surge that unfortunately made all his hair fall out. So he now looks like a little Sphinx kitty.
Luckily, we did find out that would only last an hour, so it would grow back very quickly. But poor guy, he was very upset. Wished he could be big. Wished he was big, and suddenly he was illusionarily the size of GB. Oh,
yeah,
cat puberty.
I know. Well, and he wished he was big because he wanted to fight with us, but we wouldn't let him because he's a kitten.
I know, it was so cute.
He's a little tiny baby. My nephew has to stay safe.
I will say every time your nephew. Oh God. I will say that every time Primart says my nephew, Callie's heart just goes. For some reason, she's just like, "Oh, that is so cute." Oh no. And then immediately goes, "Nope."
It's okay. You have 200 chickens to fill the biological clock urge for the moment.
Absolutely.
But yes, they are everyone's Nef-meows.
Those kittens are going to be so spoiled, just like Lark's baby is going to be so spoiled.
Yes, true facts. These are true facts.
So the last episode that we are recapping tonight is episode 112, Aruna 25-1200. The group decides to finally go and confront Zeknar Fettles. We arrive with a gift of eggs for him, using our telepathic bond through GB to really try and keep connected. And when we meet with him, he seems much warmer than the day before when we were mistaken by the hag. He says when we were to ask him about his staff that the top of it is just a fancy rock that he found one time. And it wasn't clear if he was playing dumb with us or not. GB learned that the logs Zeknar burns are created in some sort of counterspell ritual. And Callie, being Callie, eventually decided that she was getting very tired of beating around the bush and asked whether Zeknar had constructed the identity of Zeknar when he was reincarnated or if he took it from someone. He stood from his chair and said that he was sad that there were not more of them there. He was expecting them to be more of a... When Callie said that they just came to talk, and that really one of the things she just wanted to know was why his body was drugged all the way to the city limits, Zeknar said, "Well, how else am I supposed to get you all here? And then you started this war, and in my master's name, I will end it." Syl grappled Zeknar and tried to grab his staff away, and Zeknar repeatedly yelled out, "No, you will not take him from me." We realized once we fought with the various oozes and jellies that rushed the cabin, almost killing Callie and knocking several others down in a fight that was brutal with both shadow jellies and red ochres and blood oozes taking over. Syl finally was able to get the staff away from Zeknar, and we realized that the staff itself was the one yelling about not being taken away, not Zeknar. Zeknar, once the staff was removed, was reduced to the man that we saw the first night at the king's castle, and we realized that the staff had been controlling him this entire time, and that part of the thing that the staff does is make you turn against your friends and want to kill them all. We realized that the airshell orb on top was the rock that Zeknar, or Din, had been fighting with Wabura over, and it's also a devourer, or one of. Syl was able to throw off the staff's influence as it attempted to crawl into her brain, and GB, believing that Zeknar was evil, walked forward to end him, but when he saw his eyes brimming over with tears, seemingly relief, GB was unable to do it. He said he appeared completely changed, from the confident, arrogant drunk that we knew to be Zeknar to a timid, sad, relieved dwarf, and GB could not kill him. Callie brought Dim home and gave Wabura a proper funeral service with Din. And Callie told Wabura about having been killed by Wabura, awoken as a dwarf, and how Wabura had left the staff with him out of guilt. He also told of how the staff taught him and how it began to control him, and how once he refused to do the things that the staff had said he wanted to do, completely took over his brain. And he killed Wabura and dragged the body to the part where the party would find it. And all he wants to do as Din is to go back home to Lemon Island, which Callie swears that she will help him do. And that's where we ended episode 112.
Yep. And tomorrow is episode 113.
Exactly. I'm excited.
Okay, now we're into questions.
We don't actually have any questions tonight. We don't have any audience questions, and I don't have any questions that were given to us, I don't think.
We had some in the CH chat.
Oh, okay, let's go find them.
There weren't a ton, but there were a few. Okay.
The questions, are there any that we can answer, or are they all for Logan?
Yeah. Oh, there was one question that Jay asked, which is an evil question.
Oh, that
sparks or glitter?
That is an evil question because I love both my meows.
Yes, me too.
I love how mischievous Sparks is. And I love how outgoing Glitter is. So I love them both for very different reasons. I don't think I could pick one.
I have to agree. I couldn't pick one. They're both too amazing and cute. And Jay is evil for asking.
Yes.
I'm trying to see if we had any others. I think that was the only one we had there. Zach did ask questions earlier, but I had to refresh my chat and I lost them, so I don't know what they were. One of them, I think, was what do we regret? What do our characters regret? Oh, did you hear me? Oh, Tessa, I can't hear you. Okay, so in answer to Zach's earlier question, Zach, if you can pull up those questions again, that'd be great. I had to refresh, and so now I can't see the old ones, unfortunately. But I remembered the one question, which was, what do our characters regret?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent.
I think for Soxy, this is an old one. This is not from the current arc, but the really big thing that she still regrets is the fight where we lost Mari, and Mari died. The first party death, but also Soxy felt at least partly responsible because she did attack the cloaker and didn't know that it would. Soxy didn't know. Heather knew. Soxy didn't know that it was going to hurt Mari as much as it did. So she regrets that. She felt bad about that. I'm trying to think of anything recent that she would regret, and I can't think of anything from the present arc.
Callie has regrets. She regrets that she wasn't able to, that she pushed so hard for the mountains in an effort to try and save the new Goa, and then completely was ineffectual at doing so. She regrets oh man, there's a lot. She regrets being so foolhardy early on, and she definitely regrets having stayed with the Dragon Sentinel for as long as she did. She does not regret taking the book from the Dragon Sentinel at all. She still wishes that she has them because she's still not convinced that there's something different. If these translations have been around and are so easily and readily available, then why was
the book so special?
Why was that book so special? Why was that one so important? So
there's
still a part of her that is like,
yeah, something else going on here.
Yeah.
Sorry. But I think that's what you were going to say. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, was that exactly what I was going to say. Other than that, Kelly doesn't live with Kelly tries not to live with regret. It's not great.
Okay, and here's some more questions. How do your characters feel about Din now that he's no longer under a It says Devolver, but I think that's supposed to be Devourer's influence. That's a weird one because he was under the influence, so he was being controlled. But also, how much did he fight it is the question, and we don't know exactly.
Yeah, it did kind of sound like he had said that he had finally put his foot down on fighting it when he got taken over. Okay. So I personally I feel very badly for Din / Zeknar, and I definitely want to see him make it home because Callie's interaction with him was very different in that she had only seen him really after the reveal, and just you could tell that he was a scared, sad, terrified old man, and just she knows what it's like to be in a different body than the one you were born with, and she can sympathize.
Yeah, that's fair. Soxy, that's one of the reasons why Soxy wouldn't go after him, even with the questionable history, is just because she's like, I know what it's like to not have everything, to not remember, to be somewhere completely different and have to start all over. So, yeah. Okay. Next, who else do you think heard the word Cinderhaven when the party did? Did that cause Moblade to begin the week of nightmares? Zach, I think that question was from you. Do you mean inside the Illithid bodies? Now we wait for the delay.
Is that what's going on? Because I didn't see any questions pop up.
They did have a couple pop up, but yeah. Yes, he says yes. Okay. So I'm terrified to think who else heard the word Cinderhaven when the party did as the Illithid. And I do think that could explain why Moblade showed up, because he could have been sent by someone, which is horrifying.
Yeah, that was definitely very, very, very concerning. Okay, so now I can see chat. So I apologize, folks, if you have been chatting at me and I have not been trying to ignore you. I had no idea anyone was actually talking in chat because my screen feed was just blank the entire time. So I am so sorry. I promise I was not trying to ignore you. No wonder I was so confused. I'm like, where is she finding these questions? I don't see them anywhere. Oh, technology, you so wacky.
Indeed. Okay, so same question to you then. Who else do you think heard the word Cinderhaven, and is that what caused Moblade to start the Week of Nightmares?
I think maybe Donovan heard it. Because that's right when he came back. Well, no, they were also resurrecting Donovan, so I don't know. The Pants song has been in my head for a very long time now, Finnick. I don't know. I think it might be one of the reasons why the owner of the mirror ring is maybe coming back to town.
Ooh, good call. That's
could be interesting.
Indeed.
Let's hope not.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, next question. Is it a concern that Kithra went along with what Moblade said, considering what we know about how truthful it was? That's a good question, but I'm not too concerned about it because at least what Moblade said in front of Kithra appears to have been true. Like what he said in front of Kithra talked about transferring the phylactery from one person to another, which was accurate. It could be transferred to a different person. And he talked about how Calqua would show up. He didn't talk about who Calqua was or the origins of Calqua. That was all just Kithra. So I'm I kind of feel like, Kithra didn't necessarily know that Kalqua had become the Blade. Is it possible she knew? Yes. But she didn't necessarily know that that was the case.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. It's very. I have not dealt with Kithra. So I don't know how I feel about that one.
I think Soxy's only met her like once. So she doesn't have any personal stake in it. It's more just looking at the information. She's like, well, we didn't find out anything in front of her that was wrong. We just didn't find out enough. So it's kind of weird. Okay. Next question from Fennec. Now that you have 2 of the several devourers, there's 8 of them. We have 2 of 8. We have a quarter of them. Do you think there will be temptation among the party to use them in the fight against the King of Secrets? Ooh, that's a good question.
Yes.
And yes.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
Did you see that staff try to disintegrate Syl? Because I'm pretty sure there's a couple people in the party who'd be like, yes, please. I would like to disintegrate the King of Secrets. Thank you very much.
Well, there's also that sword, Mawblade, for all that it's evil and awful, can do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. Though we have confirmed that we don't necessarily need him to defeat the King of Secrets.
Yeah.
I'm 100% behind letting Mawblade starve to death.
Me too. I don't care for him.
I do not like. No, thank you.
No, nor do I.
No, thank you.
Okay. Question from Zach. What is Callie and Soxy's motivation to stay in Cinderhaven and defend it? Well, that's a good question.
Honestly, for Callie, Primeheart is a huge part of that. Primeheart and Connor and Afra are becoming. I mean, she loves everybody in the group. They are friends, and she's absolutely willing to go to bat for them, regardless of the issues that she might have with people or that they might have with her. She's like, we're a team, but Callie's entire past was built on running. I mean, when the Fate Eaters came, she was like, all right, we're out, let's go. And then suddenly it was, okay, no, we're not running anymore. We're sticking to it. So I would say the motivations, Callie wants to make a home. She's tired of running. So I think being a part of the guild and kind of finding the people that she's in relationships with, rather than it just being okay, we're gonna have our fun and then I'm gonna split, actually making relationships with people is kind of what's keeping her there now.
Yeah. And for Soxy, there's some similarities. It's a different situation, but in Soxy's case, Cinderhaven is quite literally the only home that she has ever known. Because of her backstory with having no memories prior to waking up in a cell with Oshin, she literally doesn't remember any other home. She can assume that she's from Lamina Island, given that she's a chitin, but she herself has no idea what waits there for her, whether she has family there or whether they're dead. She doesn't know if she was cast out for some reason, and that's how she ended up in Cinderhaven. She has no idea. Cinderhaven is her home. It's all she's ever known. And beyond that, there's the fact that she has a very real stake in, lots of different people who also call Cinderhaven home. She considers Pinball a really good friend, and Oshin, of course, and they're definitely linked to Cinderhaven the same way she is. And then there's the rest of the group, some of whom have grown up in Cinderhaven, so it's very much their home, and some of whom haven't, but have made it their home. There's also the guild now that she's a part of. Like, everything she knows about her life is in Cinderhaven. She doesn't know anything else. So Cinderhaven is her life. So she has no reason to seek to go anywhere else. She would like to find out more about her past, so she does want to go to Lamina to do that, but she has no desire to leave Cinderhaven, because even if she finds out who she used to be when she goes to Lamina, Cinderhaven is still her home. And in a previous episode, I don't remember what number, it was a while ago now, when Pinball was talking about being able to give Oshin and Soxy back their original memories, one of the factors, though, was that they would likely forget everything new. So she wouldn't remember any of her friends. She wouldn't remember Cinderhaven. She wouldn't remember saving Cinderhaven. And she doesn't want to do that because she likes who she is now. And Oshin felt the same. They both want to find out who they were, but neither of them wanted to just give up everything they'd developed with people. And like in Oshin's case, that includes a husband and children. Furry children that are very cute and rambunctious and get into trouble, but they're still furry children.
Adorable, fuzzy children.
Yes. Okay. The next question is, from Fennec, which do you think will happen first? Facing Donovan or facing the King of Secrets? Ooh, that's a good one too.
Donovan probably first. I think.
Moment, yeah.
Yeah, I think Donovan. I'm prepared that we'll probably lose one other member of Victor during that, and given the three that are around, I'm prepared that's probably going to be Afra, which is sad, but it almost kind of makes sense story-wise. Sure. I don't know that for sure. It's just speculation, but yeah, we might lose one of the members of Victor, but my thought would be, if we do, it'd probably be her. Just because Pimble's married to Oshin and Jaster's pregnant, so kind of makes a little bit of sense, but I hope not.
Yeah. I hope we don't lose any of them, but I definitely think Donovan's going to try.
Yeah.
And I do think, because Donovan is now an avatar of the King of Secrets, so it makes sense that we would have to deal with Donovan before we can get to the King of Secrets. Just logically, like boss fight style, like you've got to deal with the underlings before you hit the big boss. So that's what I feel like is going to happen. But also Donovan has a lot of history with the group in various ways, especially Oshin and Soxy. So, yeah. It's hard to say 100%, but I think it's probably going to be Donovan. Okay. Next question.
I think we'll go ahead and we'll take one or two more just because we're already pushing up at 9 o'clock. So we'll probably take maybe one or two more.
I'm searching through chat.
I know Fennec just asked one.
Yes. If your characters had to pick between the staff or Mawblade, which would they use and why? It's a good question.
The staff, because Callie's not proficient with swords.
The blade, because Soxy would fight with a sword.
I mean, that's kind of like a, it's a little silly thing. So, but yeah, Callie would go for the staff.
Well, the other thing is too, the sword. I don't know if we ever did we ever talk about the stats that Logan gave us for that sword on stream? They're insane.
Ridiculous. I mean, okay, hang on. Mawblade does, I just thought of this, Mawblade does change itself to whatever type of weapon you are proficient with. So I would still probably take the staff, because it would not work so great. I think for Kelly to be up front again, she doesn't have the hit point.
Yeah, so Soxy has hit points she could deal with, but okay, so Mawblade is a +3 greatsword unless it changes form, and then everything changes. But it's a +3 greatsword that does 4d6 piercing damage, but you have to make a DC 17 con save or gain a level of exhaustion.
It's brutal.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel like Soxy would go for Mawblade for two reasons. One is because she hates his ass, so she is not as worried about herself falling victim to his sweet talking because she fucking hates this thing after what it tried to make them do in Dub's Dream World. Like, she does not like this thing. Second reason is because meta, but she has a decent constitution and a pretty high constitution save compared to some people in the group. So I wasn't specifically targeting you, but compared to some people in the group, her con is pretty decent. So it just feels like she'd be able to deal with the side effect better potentially. I think there's probably people with a higher con save than mine, but you know, just in general, that's my reasoning. Plus, I don't know anything about the staff.
I don't know anything about the staff either, other than it can cast disintegrate. But let's be honest, Callie would want it just for the chunk of air shell, and she'd find a way to break it off to have the air shell chunk and give it to Syl.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Any last questions before we just do a real quick shipping conversation? There's not a whole lot of ships that we haven't discussed, I think. I don't know that there are any new ones that we've popped up. I will say, Callie almost flirted with Agoa for the first time in her entire life.
With Allure?
She was very close to flirting with Al. Yeah. It was kind of weird for her. She was like, what am I doing? This is strange.
You know what? Chat might be right. I do think the DC save was when you got hit with the blade.
Oh, I thought it was the wielder. So maybe I thought it was when you hit. You have to make.
No, because now that they're talking about it, because I was in that first fight with Mawblade, and I'm remembering having to make those con saves whenever it hit me, and I kept making them. But I remember those saves.
Jay, I stand corrected. I was the one who misread it, apparently, not you guys.
Well, to be fair, that note's not super clear. It doesn't say, like, when hit, you have to make the DC save. It just says there's a DC save. Whatever. We'll fix it if we actually end up using the damn thing. Which, you know, Soxy would be perfectly happy to shove it in a couple bags of holding again and ship it off to the middle of nowhere. But that would also be a waste of a bag of holding. Again.
Again. Another one.
Indeed.
That is true. The staff does make you kill your friends. That is a problem. I was forgetting about that. Yeah. I don't like that. Don't do a hit, Kelly. Kelly's real good at doing hits, unfortunately. With that being brought up to light, I almost think she would take Mawblade over the staff because I don't want to kill my friends. I love my friends.
Yeah. See, and that would actually, knowing that information, that would be another reason that Soxy would choose Mawblade over the staff, because when she hits fucking hard because she's a paladin. So she does smite damage and stuff too, which, yeah, I would not want to hit any of our spellcasters with like a level 3 divine smite on top of my normal attack. Like, oh my god, it would be so bad. It would be so bad.
Let's see, we're level 10. I have 73 hit points. I'm sure you are close.
I have
90s.
95.
Yeah.
You also know from playing many games with me, I historically roll really well on hit points.
I took the medium this time because I was like,
Yeah, I think I rolled a 9 this time.
Nice.
On my D10, and Mike did too, actually. We both have a lot of hit points. The two paladins.
When I was making Callie and I rolled my first 4 levels of hit points, before I asked Logan if I could change to just taking the medium, I rolled like a 2, a 1, a 1, and a 2 on the D8, and I was like, I don't like any of these. So I said, Logan, can I just take the standard and not roll? He was like, yeah, you can do that. That's pretty atrocious. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, but no, our spellcasters though, I think Saldana still only has 40-something hit points. And a Divine Smite at 3rd level would let me add, like, God, was that like 4d8 or 5d8 to my hit? Yeah, no, me, and if I had Mawblade on top of that, no, or, well, I don't know what the staff does, but yeah, if I had something like that on, me attacking a friend is a bad idea. Any of us attacking a friend is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But Soxy in particular would be like, nope.
Yeah, my 4th level cure or inflict wounds is a little gruesome.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. So shipping.
Let's see here. Who do we ship? We've got our standard ships.
Really any, yeah, I mean, there's the standard ones, most of which have already happened.
Just give Callie time; she'll work her way the rest of the way through. I'm kidding.
Can I ship the remaining members of Victor with not dying?
Yes,
except for Donovan.
Yes, with the exception of Donovan. Or Happiness. I'm happy with shipping them with Happiness.
Yes. I would like to ship my 2 nephews with not getting into so much trouble that they hurt themselves.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yep.
I am super excited that one is a wild magic sorcerer and one is leaning towards being a wizard. That is amazing. Poor Oshin, because all Oshin is like, no magic, and both of them. After Callie off the clock. Yes, I ship glitter with clothing. I ship glitter with clothing hard.
Yes, glitter with clothing is adorable.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember which one has the wild magic and which one is the wizard.
Glitter has
Sparks
the wild
was
magic.
the wizard,
Sparks
and glitter had the wild magic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's right. Yes, yeah. Soxy wants to get Sparks a wizard hat that has like little gears and stuff on it for the School of Invention.
That'd be amazing.
With little ear holes for his cat ears, because I am that auntie. I've been told I can't buy stuffed animals for my actual real life niece anymore.
I wrote 3 verses of the Pants song after the first day. It was a lot of things like, oh, brother doesn't have no pants, and daddy doesn't like wearing pants, in reference to Pinball. And something, I think the end of it was like, so I can have all of the pants, and I don't remember how I got there. But I had Logan pretty much just dying for like 20 minutes.
Okay, let's see, other ships. There's not really a lot of new ones. We've been having a lot of intense stuff and not so much like the fun romancy stuff, which is fine. Mm-hmm. We all signed up for that because most of us have played games with Logan before.
That's true.
But, yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of romance type stuff lately. It'll be interesting to see what happens for Pip and Soxy when we go to Lamina Island.
I am very, very excited to see what happens when we go to Lamina Island. Logan has been talking about potentially doing a little bit of a time skip, so we'll see what ends up happening there. I am interested. I am very interested to see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm happy that we are already paid off our debt to the Sub-Rosarium at this point. Like, that was awesome.
Me too. That was one less thing to worry about. Yeah, sometime between now and when we go to Lamina Island, we have to actually figure out how chitin breeds so that we can figure out what Soxy has to deal with when we go to Lamina, because we haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Sildub is a top tier ship. I love it. I love it. 100%. I love it so much.
It's a ship that has sailed, and we've got like just dating on the back with all these cans trailing behind them. Yes, I love them. Hearts and fireworks.
I love it.
They're adorable. I can't think of any new ones right now. Like, we haven't really had any new characters introduced where it was like, yes, that's a good character for one of us to try to be interested in. Oh, you know what? I take that back. I ship Rosie with the Paladin or Grit.
Rosie and Grit
from the Goblin Army.
Rosie and Grit.
I ship Rosie and Grit.
Yeah, I'm here for that. I am here for Rosie and Grit.
I think that would be fantastic and adorable.
I like it. I'll allow it. 100%.
Yes.
Trying to think.
Yeah, that's all I got. I ship Lark with Fatherhood.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't think of any others at the moment. And I mean, a lot of the characters already have someone they're with, and those of us that don't, those characters have kind of not shown any interest in romantic relationships yet.
Yeah.
So, so it's hard to say. Like, I know in the very, very beginning we shipped Sildana with Primeheart,
Mm-hmm.
which of course things went all over the place and that didn't stick. Um, and then we shipped who else did we ship Sildana with? Earl, I think, for a
I
little
think we
while.
actually did ship Sildana with Earl for a while because I think there was a lot
Yeah.
of us who could tell that Earl was really trying.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I ship Saldana with anybody. I think I ship Saldana with mental stability at this point.
Yes. Yes, that would be nice. And I agree, Jay. We need an Owen ship,
An Owen ship is
but
good.
he has to show interest in somebody for us to have
Holly.
an
I
Owen
ship
ship.
Holly Owen.
Yeah, I could think of I could see Holly and Owen. That's true. I could see that.
Or Ivy and Owen. Owen might be the only
Yeah,
person that Logan thinks is good enough for Ivy.
I could see that. Zach is saying that Owen Saldana could work.
It could. I think that
Maybe.
Owen. I think Saldana would need to mature maybe a little bit more, which is odd considering she's
I
like
agree.
100 years old.
Yeah, I agree though. I feel like it could work, but Saldana would need to kind of find herself in order for it to work. I don't know that Owen would necessarily want to be like a picking up the pieces kind of relationship. That doesn't
Yeah,
strike me as appealing.
no. And as far as Owen Primeheart, I'm super into it. Callie would 10 out of 10 absolutely watch.
And then score it a 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
Very nice. Yeah, and then like Pip and Soxy haven't shown any interest in anyone. The closest thing we got to those two was Pip showing interest in Anika to go talk to her and call her like pretty lady and stuff like that
Yes.
at the tea garden way back when. But that was more of a like, I'm trying to find out about this person, not so much I'm trying to hit on this person.
Yeah. I do kind of low-key Owen and Pinball as well, but at the same time, as you say, Jay, they are married. But polyamory is a thing. I'm just,
True.
it's a thing. It's out there. As Oshin has said, just talk to people. Which Callie has echoed. Just have a conversation. Literally, it's all good.
Yep. Yeah, I can't think of any others.
All right. Well, I am gonna see here then if it's about 9:15. Let's see if we can't go ahead and get all wrapped up.
Okay.
Logan, are you there, my dear? It looks like you are listening in. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much again for sticking with us and asking us your questions. And we hope to see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for my brain to shut down because of Zach's comment about Primeheart being the bread in a Rex Field sandwich, and it just checked out for a good hot minute, so I'll be in my bunk. Carry on, you funky little tieflings.
Night, guys.